how is it as a man that has a burning desire to keep his woman shielded from the rest of the world, from other men looking at her or lusting over her, is okay in the comment section with all these men saying, "Oh sister, you're so cute, I love your smile. Wow, mashallah." Of course, it has to be mashallah. So now your husband doesn't know how to give a compliment. The last time he gave you a compliment is when he was off of the operation room and he was still half drugged, so he had the courage to give you a compliment. And you get compliments every single day. So what do you start doing? Without knowing, without paying attention, without realizing, you go to your husband, "You don't love me anymore." The shaitan will not let you rest. The shaitan, the number one thing he wants to do is to separate between couples and divorce them. Then you start to realize, I don't need him. Khalas. Once the idea of you do not need your husband goes into your mind, you will soon be divorced.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وعلى آله وأصحابه وسلم تسليما كثيرا وبعد. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, Deen lovers. Today we are here again with our most amazing guests that we have, Sheikh Muhammad Susi. How are you doing today in this
MashaAllah,
nice,
alhamdulillah.
hot
It's hot in Minnesota, MashaAllah.
So today we're going to be dealing with a very, very sensitive topic. This topic is not talked about too much. We've touched a lot. We've covered a lot about marriage and the ahkām of marriage and the realities of it, but not divorce. So divorce, we're going to dive deep into divorce today, because with a phenomenon like this, we need to know how to approach it from the kitab and the sunnah, and with adab and proper etiquette. So inshallah, faddal, let's get right into it.
All right. Bismillah, alhamdulillah, salatu wassalamu ala rasulillah wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa man wala. It's good to be back, mashallah ta'ala. This is a different format, so inshallah ta'ala we'll get right to it. Shuf, I'll make a small introduction, inshallah ta'ala, and based on that we can do the questions and answers and so forth. Dear brothers and sisters, something I want to, of course, bring up firstly is that Talaq and divorce is a book. People have done a master's program, they've written books about it. In fiqh, in jurisprudence, it's called Kitab al-Talaq. So in this hour and a half, I'm not going to discuss your case or what you've gone through with your husband, or the intricate details of the different talaqs that are out there, the different divorces, and we're going to touch upon those things for sure. And what I want to do is I want to create awareness of the modern day problems that are leading to talaq. This is more important than the jurisprudence portion of it, because that is in the books of fiqh. And quite frankly, your situation is a very specific situation to you. For instance, if you looked at the talaq, if you had the same talaq in a Muslim country, it would have different outcomes than it does in America. Even though it's the same two people, same talaq, it would have two different outcomes have it being done in a Muslim country or in the US, which makes it very intricate, makes it very sensitive, makes it very detail-oriented, and very, very, very specific and nuanced. So having that said, I just want to make sure that, based on the title, somebody's going to jump in and say, I got my information, I know how my talaq is going to be, or my divorce is going to be. No, please don't do that. Understand, and this is the depth of our conversation and why we're talking today, is what happens after talaq? Why do people get divorces? What are some of the problems that the youth, young men and women, and even, quite frankly, people have been married for 10, 15, 20 years, are going through, and why that is leading to talaq. So I want to talk about those nuances. I want to talk about the things that you're not hearing on the mimbar, the things you're not hearing in the podcast, the things that you're not hearing from the so-called social media moguls or da'is or what they call them these days, dawah bros. Is that what they're calling them, the dawah bros?
The Dawah
I guess we're
Bros.
considered the part of that dawah bro
Yeah,
family
probably.
in some way.
Just in a different
Inshallah
category.
ta'ala, but yeah, I guess it's so easy to just gather people up. So
Lump
we can just
everyone
get
up,
right
yeah.
into it, inshallah
Okay.
ta'ala, if you want to start.
Okay, inshallah ta'ala. My first question is, what is the ahkam of divorce? Talk about that with, give us the evidence or two about it, inshallah.
Okay. So what you mean about ahkam of divorce, let's say it is mashru'iyyat of divorce. Is the divorce permissible, for instance, okay? And I think that's what we mean by that. So mashru'iyyat of divorce. Is divorce even permissible in Islam? Yes, divorce is permissible in Islam. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala made it so to either stop something that is destructive and or evil, or for people to separate, to have better lives, and so forth and so on. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He says, الطلاق مرتان فإمساك بمعروف أو تسريح بإحسان. In another verse, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَإِن يَتَفَرَّقَا يُغْنِي اللَّهُ كُلًّا مِّن سَعَتِهِ. So what do these two verses mean? First of all, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, الطلاق مرتان. The talaq is actually 3 times as the max, meaning the man and woman have one divorce, then they can return to each other. They have a second divorce, and they can return to each other. And after the third one is done. They can no longer return to each other unless the woman or the wife marries somebody else, not to free her, to marry her husband again, because هذا يسمى المحلل in Arabic, somebody who is trying to make something haram halal. Okay, so it's not a legitimate marriage. And not to go down that rabbit hole, inshallah ta'ala, in the details of that. So after the third time, it's done. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that the talaq is twice. You have twice for you guys to remain married. The third time is done. It's over. Okay, and that could be done over a span of 10 years, 15, 20 years. A lot of people don't, they think that every year it starts all over again, or it's just 3 strikes all at one time, The majority of ulama talk about the talaq is you cannot say 3 times, أنا طلقتك أو أنت طالق. You are divorced 3 times in one majlis, in one setting. That it's frowned upon. Some ulama said that it's not accepted, it will be accepted only as one. And those are all jurisprudence nuances we're not going to discuss. But the point I want to make is, if when you first got married, and there was one talqa, one divorce, okay? That divorce counts. You need to hold on to it. You can't just forget. Because maybe it happens again in 10 years or 15 years, the second one, and you forget.
Yeah.
And a lot of times people are living together in haram wal-'iyadhu billah, and they don't know it. This is what we want to create awareness of.
True.
Like somebody came to a sheikh and he said, Ya sheikh, and whenever I get mad at my wife, I give her talaq. I talaqed her hundreds of times. So the sheikh said, the first 3 times was halal and all the rest were haram, But, and I'm not here to give you a fatwa, and I'm not a mufti, and your particular situation is nuanced. Please don't send, something, write in the comments something like, hey, this happened to me, what should I do? We are not going to answer your questions, If it's a basic question, we might get around to it, but your situation might need a mufti or a specialized sheikh or a qadi, meaning an Islamic ruler or judge, especially if you're in a Muslim country, okay? So having that said is so yes, the talaq is a very serious matter. It's not a joke. The Prophet ﷺ, he says, ثلاثة جدهن جد وهزلهن هزل النكاح والطلاق والرجعة. And in another narration, قال والعتاق أي أن تعتق عبدا. For instance, the Prophet ﷺ, he said, 3 things are seriously serious. جدهن جد جد وهزلهن جد. And even when you're not serious, they are taken seriously. What are those? He said, nikah, marriage, and divorce, and returning somebody from the divorce. I mean, when a husband says to his wife, I take you back. And then in another narration, it says, al-itaq is when you expiate a slave and you give them their freedom, okay? Or you free a slave. So those things, you cannot go back on them, meaning you cannot say jokingly to somebody, like this happens a lot, people be joking around. Would you marry me your daughter? Oh, ahla wa sahla feek, marhaban. Yes. And there's people there. There's shuhud. That's marriage.
So if the guy does that and he's like, "We married my daughter," laughing, and the guy says, "Yeah, sure," and there's witnesses, but he doesn't mention like the name, does it still count? Or?
Well, yeah, let's say he said that, Wallahi, your daughter al-fulaniyah.
Yeah.
Because some people are really smart and they try to do it the sneaky way.
Right.
I'm not recommending you guys do this,
Subhanallah.
but we need to be aware. We don't play. This is not a play. It's not a game.
Good point.
It's not a game. And so if you ask somebody in marriage and they say yes, it's a serious matter. It's accepted. And that person could hold you accountable in front of an Islamic judge or Islamic ruler. If there was the shuhud were there. And then a lot of people, he'll say, I give you 1,000 dinars or 1,000 dirhams or $1,000 for your daughter. And he's joking and he takes it. It's over, akhi. Yeah, and yes, the father can marry his daughter without her consent in many cases. So we don't joke with these manners. This is the point I want to tell you. And please don't start jumping up and down and she's young and she's 18. We're not here to debate any of those things. We're talking about in certain cases, this could be very dangerous and somebody could find himself in serious trouble by playing around with things that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala told us not to play with, or his Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And then talaq, same thing with the talaq. You know, he's sitting with his wife and they're having a good time. He's like, what if I just give you a divorce? You're divorced. And she says, yeah, if you're man enough, do it. This has happened. This has happened, akhi. It's a joke.
You know, this is in YouTube. YouTubers do this, Muslim YouTubers, as pranks.
Nasallah al-afwa wal-afiyah, akhi. There is no, you cannot prank. And a lot of these pranks ended up serious.
Yes.
Okay, a woman sitting on the couch with her husband. They're having a good time. They're watching something or talking. They're having a good time together. And she says, do you love me? Would you ever leave me? He's like, no, I would never leave me. He's like, really? You'd never divorce me? And then they get into it.
No.
And then it's a shaitan, akhi. It's a shaitan. The woman is like, don't play these games, sisters especially. The men usually don't play these games. I know they might do stupid pranks, but please do not play these games. It is haram to do so. وَلَا تَتَّخِذُوا آيَاتِ اللَّهِ هُزْوًا. Do not take the ayahs and the miracles of Allah in his boundaries as a joke or in jokingly manner.
Yes.
And this, Allah here in this ayah is talking about the talaq. And he's talking about when you divorce a woman, do not hold her against her will, meaning that every time you get close to the iddah. And we're going to talk about so many things, okay? But this is the stuff that, the nitty gritty. So you guys can, I want to create awareness around this because people joke around with this. Wallahi, akhi, so the story of the brother, the sister kept on hounding him. He's like, anti talaq. He divorced her on the spot. What did she say? Oh, hunt alik bis-suhula di? Oh, you just divorced me. Was I that easy? You didn't even care? You just divorced me just like that? That's how it happens. And that's a talqa. That happens. And that is counted against you.
That's counted as a talqa.
As a talqa. If you're going to get into a divorce or you think you might divorce your spouse, husband or wife, make sure it's done at the right time for the right reasons. Because Allah, when He said there's a divorce, then there's, you take the person back or accept them back or, stop that first divorce and second divorce. It's for a hikmah. It's for a reason. It's not for playing around. It's not to give man the authority of pounding his chest. It's not the whole patriarchy against. It's not. It's for very, very, very specific cases. And when the man has to be, he can't be really upset and you can't just say it as a reaction. There's so many things that go into this,
Sure.
So we don't play around with talaq. We don't play around with your daughters and their marriage. Don't do it, you guys. Just don't do it. All right? And then, alhamdulillah, that we don't have any slaves, so we're not going to worry about that today, inshallah ta'ala. And the same thing with taraj'a. When you're going to accept the wife back, for instance, you don't say, oh, you know what? Should I accept you back or not? Or, yeah, I accept you back. And then, haha, just joking. There is no, again, there's no joke in these things. Okay? These three manners especially. Jadduhunna jadd. وَهَزْلُهُنَّ جَدْ. Even when you're jokingly, it's considered as a true statement. So we don't play with these things at all. And for you young men, learn to zip it. The word talaq take it out of your vocabulary. It's not a game. It's not a game. And it's usually when the man is at a disadvantage or he's very weak that he has to threaten his wife with this. So be careful. Don't use it. And if you're going to use it, shar'an, and this we're going to talk about, the categories of the talaq. هناك الطلاق, there's just meaning the husband gives the divorce or calls out the divorce to his wife or spouse. And then there's al-khula, the woman says, I no longer can live with this person. I want to divorce, but I need to give him back the mahar, and if there's any substitution or retribution for loss in that marriage, it's all on a case-by-case basis and it's all in agreement. Okay? And then there is ما يسمى بال طلاق الضرر, or there's another word good for it. It's called it's really not that, but we'll just say الطلاق الضرر ولا الطلاق القاضي is what they call it. Okay, so it's done by a qadi or an Islamic judge / ruler and so forth. Okay, so the first divorce, هناك زواج طلاق سني وطلاق بدعي. Okay, in the first category there's two. There's a Sunni and there's a Bad'i. Okay, the Sunni is what? The Sunni is أن تطلقها في طهر لم تجامعها فيه. Okay, is to divorce your wife after her menstruation. She becomes pure to salat. Okay, and for you guys to be intimate, but you did not approach her. You were not intimate with her in that period. After her menstruations come, then you guys did not meet up at all, whether it's the first day, the first week, the second week, before her next menstruations. And then you are in a stable sense. You're not angry, you're not upset, you're not breaking the dishes and the walls. And of course, none of you do that, mashallah. Ta'ala alaikum, alhamdulillah. Okay, and you can't do that in America because they'll break your head if you do so. Yeah. So, هذا الطلاق السني. This is how it should be. You consult with somebody you entrust, somebody who has more experience, an elder, a sheikh, a alim. State your case and understand the consequences. And we'll talk about that kind of a little bit afterwards. The consequences of that action in that divorce. Okay? And if you are a hothead, and if your parents know that you are a hothead, there are certain people you should not marry, no matter how much you thought they're good looking, how much money they might have, or how much they're going to help you, how much of a power couple you're going to be, a power couple that you're going to be. Don't get married to that person. It's going to be a constant battle. There has to be the yin and the yang. There has to be somebody who is stronger in the relationship and one who is weaker in the relationship. And I'm not talking about weakness of the personality. I'm just talking about somebody who's willing to give in. Okay, who is softer. One who can massage the person who is strong in their personality. And we're hoping that it's the man. But in this day and age, it could be otherwise. Okay, yes. So that's the zawaj al-sunni. Zawaj al-bid'i, and they are both accepted.
Is it talaq?
Talaq. I don't know why I keep on mentioning the word zawaj, you know?
Is related, but you go ahead.
We've been talking about zawaj for a long time.
So long.
الطلاق البدعي الله المستعان. الطلاق البدعي is to divorce the woman at any time without thinking about it, on her menstruations. And subhanallah, shuf, al-hikmah, the wisdom of our shara is the woman on her menstruations a lot of times has some issues with hormones. She's in pain. She's not on her best, or she's not in her best state of mind, yes, and or feelings.
She's
and this is not. She's going through many issues. Okay, and this is normal. Embrace it, sisters. We don't want you to be strong all the time. We are not marrying you because you are strong. We are marrying you because you are soft.
Gentle.
Okay? Now, so, having that said, this is why we wait until that menstruation portion is over with, and you've thought it through, and that you are able to be intimate together if the case was that.
Yeah.
But then if all of those mawana, if all of those little nuances are taken away and you still want to divorce, then that's how it should be. هذا الطلاق السني والبدعي is to do it in other those times, is whenever you feel like it, to do it on the, other than the sunnah, okay? But they are both considered a divorce, both of them, okay? Al-khula is quite obvious that the woman, she comes to a judge or a ruler, or she talks to her father or whatever, and she says, I can't live with him anymore, okay? And that's fine. The point I want to really shy many sisters away from, just like Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He told the men to fear Him and to not hold the women prisoners, وَلَا تُمْسِكُهُنَّ ضِرَارًا لِتَعْتَدُوا وَمَنْ يَفْعَلْ ذَلِكَ مِنْكُمْ نعم فقد ظلم نفسه ومن يفعل ذلك فقد ظلم نفسه ولا تتخذوا آيات الله هزوا. So what, and I'm going to come back to the khula. The men, they used to divorce the woman and they wait the iddah. The iddah is 3 menstruations. So from the time that talaq happens, it starts at the first menstruation, second, at the third. So before the third one is over, the husband, before a week or whatever the case may be, he says, no, I take you back. To do what? To make her life miserable. He's not doing it because he wants her back, or he desires her back. He does it because, in parentheses, for those of you who cannot see me, Allah has given him the authority to give the talaq, then he takes it in a non-serious way, in a non-shar'i way, in non-fear in Allah way, to persecute or to harm that sister or that wife. Whether he likes her, he doesn't, she's worthy, she's not, we're not talking about those details, okay? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala told us to be men and not to do those things. The same thing with the sister. In today's day and age, Akhil Kareem, some sisters who fear Allah, and I'm going to say this in parentheses, they fear Allah, meaning they pray, they're like, okay, I'm not going to go to court. I'm not going to go to court. What will they do, Akhi? And I'm just got done over a big divorce case. It's been going on for almost 2 years, and it's going to go for another 2 years before it's done. Subhanallah. Okay. The sister will start acting a fool. So the husband divorces her. And so she can get the most out of that marriage, and she does not want to be with him. First of all, you're staying with that husband and you're not fulfilling his rights. And his rights are extremely, extremely, extremely important. We're going to talk about kids and so forth as we go on. So be careful that when you want to ask for khula, you're giving up a lot of your rights. You're giving up maybe even some wealth, depending on your situation, for the husband to agree to the divorce. Yes, this is a power invested to this husband by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and that's Deenul Islam. And of course, this Deen of Islam is prescribed to us for a certain reason, has subscribed certain things for us for a reason. Okay? So don't come and say, oh, why can't I? You cannot. I'm sorry, you just cannot. Sister, you cannot. You cannot ask for a divorce just out of thin air. Okay? As the Prophet ﷺ, he said, أيما امرأة سألت زوجها طلاقا من غير بأس فحرام عليها رائحة الجنة. The Prophet ﷺ, he said, any woman that asks her husband for a divorce without any harm that's been done to her, okay? And we need to put 100 lines under harm. Because today, if you yell at your wife, that's emotional abuse.
Yeah.
Okay? So this is very nuanced. That's why I said your case is a very case-by-case situation. Okay? But anyways, if the woman wants to fear Allah, she will find out what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants from her, and how the divorce should happen, and how she should ask for khula or not. But please, dear sisters, don't try to punish the husband as well by acting a fool to a point where he wants to divorce you. Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows what's in your heart. Okay? So if you don't like him, you don't want to live with him, and I don't want to hear the story, I gave him everything. حتى هو, I'm sure, inshallah, he gave you everything, okay? But if he did not give you everything, and he transgressed against you by sleeping around, by hitting you in very severe manners, he's doesn't pray, he's
Spend on
transgression, he's transgressing against you, against the kids. He's just a bad person, a bad husband, a bad father. And the qadi and the judge will determine this. And I'm sure you have your proofs, inshallah ta'ala. So in this case, this is a different situation where you can ask for divorce out of necessity, out of because you were harmed in the relationship, and there is retribution for your situation. Alhamdulillah, Islam is fair, but I'm talking about those who go out of their way and act a fool for months, years, in hopes that the husband will just get fed up and divorce her so she can get her mu'akhar, she can get her car, she can get half of the house, whatever it is, her intentions or whatever was promised at one point when they got married, so she doesn't have to return it, okay? And there's very specifics in kutub al-fiqh if you guys need to know more. So those situations I want us to be very aware of. And as we go, we'll talk more about the children and the consequences of how that goes.
So just a quick question on the khulu'. Khulu', does the woman also have 3 khulu'? That's like the man has 3 talaq. Like how does that work?
Yeah. Well, the khula is only one. What she asked for khula, the husband yutalliquha talqa. He's the one who gives her the talaq. She initiates it, but he has to give it to her.
Okay, so what's the iddah?
It's the same thing.
Okay.
It's the same thing as a talaq. It's just it's the nuance of who gets what. But the talaq itself is the same. Some ulama say that the khula is she leaves immediately the house, that she doesn't stay for the iddah. Some say it's 1 month. And once again, this is a very nuanced fiqh situation, but it's when she asks for khula and they come to terms and they agree, الرجل يقول طلقتك طلقة. I have divorced you 1 divorce. And some ulama, then they have the right to remarry again if they wanted to later on, just like when her iddah is over. It's very similar.
So just similar to this here, the talaq, I wanted to ask you a quick question. A lot of people may not even know this. Once a husband pronounces a divorce, does the woman leave the home, or must she still stay there?
The woman is not to leave the home. وَلَا تُخْرِجُهُنَّ مِنْ بُيُوتِهِنْ. Allah told us they are not to leave their homes unless there's an extreme situation that necessitates this. And this is a case-by-case basis as well. The thing is if you look at the modern day man and woman today, is a lot of times we act like children. We deal with this situation like it's a game, you know? وَأَخَذْنَا مِنْكُمْ مِيثَاقًا غَلِيظًا, that they have taken with you or from you a huge and burdensome promise and contract with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Marriage is not a joke, and breaking marriage is not a joke. It's a very serious matter, especially for women. Men might get hit financially more so than women, but women get distraught emotionally, okay? So you want to be aware of that, inshallah ta'ala. The sister, first of all, is not to leave the home unless there is a very specific situation where it gets abusive, or there's certain situations. But technically, the iddah itself is made for repair. It's to possibly repair the situation. Because what happens when people get this point of divorce, there's going to be an ego challenge of a week, of 2 weeks, of 3 weeks, a month, where the husband's going to hold off, the wife is going to be upset, but he still has his right as a husband. She does not wear hijab in front of him. The divorce is not finalized until the iddah is terminated.
Which is, how long is the iddah?
The iddah is 3 menstrual cycles. I think I mentioned it earlier. So he has his rights. As soon as, for instance, he says, okay, I will take you back, or I have taken you back, or you are, all these different, some ulama, not some ulama, the ulama say that even if he were to kiss her or to have relations with her, that means he accepted her back. He doesn't even have to say it. Okay? Or he says words that insinuate that he has taken her back, and so forth and so on. Yes, it's a time to talk, it's a time for reflection, it's a time to think, and it's time to know, can you live without this person or not? Or is it worth living without this person? Because a lot of times too, and maybe I'll touch upon this at this point, is people get a divorce, but they have no plan. They think it's a joke, and they're just going to go out there because they see the kuffar, and they see all of these sisters or women who are out there, and they're like, yeah, we're out there dating. Yes, they're dating in haram. Sisters, you need to realize they're dating in haram. They can even get monkeys to date these women. It doesn't matter. You don't need a human being to do haram. The shaitan will make it beautify. It will beautify the haram. But as a sister, and I understand there's some men you can no longer live with, and there's some women that men can no longer live with. There are irreparable situations. I am mature enough, and I know this. But over 80% of marriages, fall into divorce because of egos, because there's no plan, because of ihmal. And I tell people this. What are you going to do? Let's say you're somebody who's in iddah right now. Maybe Allah is going to save you by listening to this, ya Allah. And you're in your iddah right now, and you have all these great plans, mashallah alik. Man or woman, okay? The man is going to go out and get another job. He's going to get a nicer car. He's going to hit the gym. He's going to hit the weights, whatever. Sister, same thing. Because all of us, after a couple of kids, we all just let go. Whatever that let go means, whether we don't work at our jobs, whatever, we gain a lot of weight, or we're not healthy, or we have diabetes, or we get all sorts of health problems and issues which contribute to us not meshing together anymore. We're not in good moods. We're we're depressed. We fall into depression because of the food we eat, because of the sugars, because of the processed foods, because of the weight, because of the pre-diabetic conditions. All these contribute to you not being in your optimal health, which means will contribute to you fail in any endeavor that you do, not just your marriage. Because if you looked at your marriage as a business, I asked this woman once who wanted to divorce, and I said, sister, I'm going to ask you this. What are you going to do after you get married? And after you divorce. May Allah marry everybody. We've talked about marriage so much that's alhamdulillah khair, inshallah. But the point I want to make is, I asked her, what are you going to do after this so you become marketable? You're 32, 33 years old. What are you going to do? You have another 40 years to live. If it's life expectancy, it's going to be over 40 years. It's going to be closer to 50 years at 82 to 85 years old of the life expectancy for somebody who's 32. What are you going to do? Okay, khalas, you have your kids, and you took the kids away, and you fought for them, and you ran away off with the kids. MashaAllah alik. You get a round of applause. What's the plan? Oh, I'm going to go back to school. To become more marketable? Yeah, okay. And I'm going to go to the gym at least 4 times a week. MashaAllah. Then what? I'm going to work on my femininity and so I don't have these same problems again. Okay. I said, did you ever think if you did these things you would not be divorced right now or divorcing? Hello? If people do what they're supposed to do, they will be and remain successful. A marriage is like a business. Check the pulse, keep it alive. Forget about the pulse. It could die and you don't even realize, and it's too late. Same thing with the men. We get men that become bums. They're not participating in raising the children. They don't know how to, they just don't improve themselves. We are living in a world that you constantly need to be evolving in yourself, in oneself, in order for you to stay above water in this day and age. Everybody's watching social media. Everybody's watching movies. Everybody's watching all these little couples. MashaAllah. Is this a good time to talk about the couples?
Sure, let's do it.
About the couples.
Why not?
You guys have heard, most of you, about a very prominent couple out of Emirates. Okay, and I always tell you guys, I don't like to mention names, I like to mention situations because people's names could change, but the situations usually remain the same. Who are happily playing gender roles of the kuffar, let's say it, not gender roles of the Muslims. Pranks that surprised millions and millions and millions of followers, and they just got a divorce recently. And the point is, when they talk about how was your marriage on camera, was so happy, and in the background it was depression, I was having anxiety, I was seeing a shrink. And this is not the only couple. Almost every couple that's out there exposing their life on social media will end up in a divorce. It's over 80% chance that will happen to them. It's not only the hasad and the ayn and all the common things. It's, dear brothers, if you're listening to me, and sisters, one of the stipulations for your marriage as a husband is that your wife does not go on social media. This should be one of the stipulations. If you're on social media and you don't like this, go find somebody else in a different podcast that will marry you. We're talking to people and giving them true advice, inshallah ta'ala. By experience. Why? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created women and He told them not to look, just like He created men and told them not to look, to lower their gaze. Men are to lower their gaze because they appreciate the woman's beauty. The woman is to lower her gaze because she's always trying to expose her beauty. Meaning when the woman is out there and she's looking at men, she might look at a guy and say he's good looking or cute or he's nice or I like his hair, but that's just normal. But she's seeing, does he see me? Does he look at me? How do I look to him? Does he find me attractive? So women want to be uncovered, unveiled, exposed, because that feeds their ego. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala told them to cover themselves. And men are told not to look because men look and they lust and they enjoy whatever women have to offer. Wal-'iyadhu billah. Okay? So having that said is, when a woman's on social media, and I got this question once from somebody, why do people call me the youth? I said, let me see your social media. So he's there with his wife next to him. She has to at least have mascara on. Of course, she has on hijab, in parentheses, hijab. Some are convertible. You know what the convertible is, right? It's
pushback.
Convertible. Pushback? Convertible. 1980s. Convertible hijab. And she's makeup, they're dulled up. And they're playing and they're laughing and they're smiling and the teeth whitening and all these things. No, I'm not against teeth whitening. I'm just against it. You smiling to another 200,000 or a million men that think your smile is cute. That's what I'm against. That's what I don't like. And he says, why am I the youth? I said, brother, maybe because you're making money with your sister, with your wife, because without your wife, your content would not have been so successful. So the fact that you're utilizing your wife and her beauty in parentheses, and I said, how would you like it if somebody, and if you get anything from this podcast, please listen to these 5 minutes. How is it as a man that has a burning desire to keep his woman shielded from the rest of the world, from other men looking at her or lusting over her, is okay in the comment section with all these men saying, oh sister, you're so cute, I love your smile. Wow, mashallah. Of course, it has to be mashallah. You know, so what was his rebuttal? His rebuttal, and most of you have heard these, or maybe I've even said them, so you can be aware. His rebuttal was, well, she goes out to the workplace, she goes to school, she's out in public. I said, maybe so, although she is not to dress like that, or look like that, or be like that, or act like that in public. Most of the time, when you and her are on the camera, you're acting for the camera. Camera, action. So you're overly nice, you're overly feminine, you're overly soft, you're overly smiling in hopes to please those who are watching. It's a feminine nature. And if you don't nourish it in the right way, the shaitan will take a hold of it and nourish it in the haram way. absolute haram. No doubts in my mind that it's haram. And I tell all the single sisters, all the makeup hijabi tutorials, all the sisters who think they're helping because they just became a revert, and they go and they tell their stories online. So this is one story of couples. I'm going to talk about the sister, and these are like the 5 or 10 minutes most important of the whole podcast, inshallah ta'ala. Okay? So this brother, I said, when your wife is out there in public, she might have seen 100 people here, 100 people there, and she's not performing for those people. She's not smiling to them. She's not laughing. She's not paying attention. She's not reading their comments. They're not coming up to her and it's like, oh, sister, mashallah, I love your hijab. Or somebody's like, oh, girl, you're so modest. You look beautiful. Do you want to go out sometime? That's not happening in most cases. But the person who likes your wife, he likes her smile for whatever reason. He likes her eyes, the little bit of mascara, of course, not a lot. He likes her cheeks. He likes her teeth color. Her teeth are straight. Whatever it is that this man likes, now he has that video on his computer.
Forever.
And he can sit there and watch your wife and fantasize about her until whenever, forever. It doesn't get off the internet. Even if you decide that you're mature enough in 20 years that you don't want this stuff to be on the internet, it's too late. Whatever's on the internet, you can never take off. So we tell you, sisters, be careful what you put out there on the internet. That could turn off a future spouse, a very good, pious spouse that's going to Jannah and wants to take you with them. And they might be willing that you have a past, and they accept that, and vice versa with the sisters. This can go both ways. But I'm talking about the sister who's online, doing hijabi tutorials and makeup, talking about divorce, talking about marriage. Now we have single women who've never been married talking about marriage and divorce. Why? What do you know about marriage and divorce? You've never been married. You have no clue what it's about. Why do you talk about it? What's the ifada that you can give? Versus a sheikh or a student of knowledge who's been married 15, 20, 30 years, who has children, who has nuances, who's been in. These are the people we should listen to. These are the people, your shuyukh, your students of knowledge, who have been there, your elders. Your grandfather should be given a podcast. Okay? So this is for the couples. We're not talking about sweeping and hitting him and all that stuff is haram. It's belittling men. That's the new feminist wave of putting men down. Men are buffoons. Men are dumb. Men are idiots. All these different things. And sooner than later, your husband the shaitan is gonna blow. And first of all, the shaitan has these couples glorified. He makes them feel like they're on top of the world. They're successful. They're the power couple, in parentheses. They've made it. Oh, they're so in love. They're amazing. Oh, yeah, you fulfill me. You fulfill me. If that was the case, why do they get a divorce? Most of them get a divorce. Most of your daddies out there, they've never brought their wives on camera, if you notice. Yeah. All of your so-called high caliber imams, they never sit their wife down and talk, and expose their wives to the public because they know it's haram. Yet they will not talk about this and say it's aib or haram or la yajuz. That's what bothers me the most. Yeah. Watch what they do. Don't hear what they say. 67% of the audience on the internet is women. So most of these guys that work by the click and they make money off the internet, they have to pander and cater to that 67%. So you're not getting the truth. It might feel good now, but it's not the truth, I promise you. So this is why people will call men who have short qamisas on, long beards, who sit there with their wives who are all dolled up. Of course, they're wearing hijab shar'i for some of them. Some of them might even have niqab on. But you can see the eyes with the mascara, and that's a turn on for some people who are not pure. People who are not pure like purity, and the shaitan will beautify. Okay? So I guarantee you, every man has something that he likes about a woman. The more of that woman that's exposed, the more men are going to be attracted to that woman. And the fact that somebody else could be looking at your woman in the millions versus the 100 or 200 of men that are out in public or when she's here or there that are not paying attention, they don't have videos of her, they can't rewind that smile and look at forget, even if your wife's at the cash register and she smiles to somebody out of kindness or nicest or being alive or living out her life, and she might realize, I shouldn't have done that, whatever. That's just one person, and that will be forgotten. But when it's on camera, it's always there.
SubhanAllah. It's a social media age where before it wasn't like this. Maybe a couple of people saw you. You were at school, you were walking in the street, and people, took their time to actually look at you. But now on social media, just one video, one short clip, it surfaces the entire planet, to other sides.
And anybody can hold on to it.
Yeah, and that's
watch it over and over and over.
Digital,
and fantasize.
digital footstep. Digital footprint.
And they can take you off the other half, hubby.
Yes.
So they don't have to look at your beard and your not so cute self.
And now moving on. Inshallah.
I have one more, please.
Yes.
One more for the single sister. There's a sister out there that, of course, recently got a divorce and she has a child. And she put her divorce out there on, I think she's a British or Australian sister, so a white revert sister. Very well known. If I said the name, you would all know who she is, and I think you do. She has a very beautiful, distinctive hijab on. And of course, she's going to save the world. And every revert has to go online and tell us their story. I don't know why, akhi. Alhamdulillah, you came to Islam. Go learn Islam and practice it. You don't need to tell us your story. Wallahi, alhamdulillah. We don't need your story. We're already, mashallah, Muslims. And I know people, it's inspiring, mashallah. People get carried away. They love stories, akhi. A lot of them are over glorified. Okay? I actually wrote this sister a message, a very lengthy letter. And I said, sister, if you get off of social media, maybe you'll find a husband, because she keeps on saying, she tells her whole story online to hundreds of thousands of people. I think she has a lot of followers.
That's so cringe.
And she doesn't realize, I don't know her husband, I don't know her. But I was sent a few videos to see what's going on, and I know the story. And I could almost guarantee you that divorce happened because she's on social media. I don't know her, I don't know him, I don't know their story. But when women get very famous, and we're not talking about your money, because we don't care about how famous you are and how much money you're making. When I mean by famous, and I say that in parentheses, famous is when men start saying how cute and how nice and how beautiful, and all the attention that you cannot live without becomes problematic in your life.
Yes.
Why? All right, you're sitting here, 10 million people every day, whether it's the sister with her husband or the sister alone. MashaAllah, sister, Jazakallah khair, you helped me move on. I went from Islam to triple Islam. I became a super Muslim. Yes, from your story, MashaAllah, you read 500 comments, akhi, I will go down to 1,000 comments, and they're all, in parentheses, uplifting good comments. And your husband is an introvert. You're an extrovert. That's why you're on camera in front of the world. Your husband might be an introvert. Don't know your husband. I'm just saying in general. So now your husband doesn't know how to give a compliment. The last time he gave you a compliment is when he was off of the operation room and he was still half drugged. So he had the courage to give you a compliment. And you get compliments every single day. So what do you start doing? Without knowing, without paying attention, without realizing, you go to your husband, you don't love me anymore. The shaitan will not let you rest. The shaitan, the number one thing he wants to do is to separate between couples and divorce them. So when things are very beautiful and you're not, and your struggles are beautiful as well. Even when you have a divorce and you can go out on camera and talk about it to 100 or 200,000 people. And that's not like the sister who's divorced who can only talk to 1 or 2 people. It doesn't give the same satisfaction in your heart. It doesn't uplift you as much. So your struggles are fun as well. Even the divorce becomes, it hurts, but it's nothing like going through it by yourself or with 1 or 2 people, okay? Because it's fame, akhi, and then you have to put on the facade.
Yeah.
So now your husband, he cannot do these compliments, and you start fighting with him, and then you start to realize, I don't need him. Khalas. Once the idea of you do not need your husband goes into your mind, you will soon be divorced.
Yep.
I don't care how rich, how poor, whatever it comes to the point where you no longer need your husband, who is the provider, the protector, the father of your children, and you don't need him, if that idea just spooks up somehow in your head and you believe it, it's over.
So,
you will get a divorce.
you know, the other thing too, I was just thinking about when you were mentioning all this. If a sister becomes like famous on social media, you know, and you're walking, let's say, maybe in the grocery store with her, and some random guys just come to her, hey,
Yeah.
you're Fulana, you're Alana.
Oh, can I take a
picture?
selfie with you?
Oh my God.
What are you going to say? By the time you process it, it's already done. And now it's on his Facebook account or wherever. And now his wife is approaching your husband and saying, what's your wife doing with... Akhi, it's a mess, akhi. People don't realize it's a mess. It's a perpetual mess. It's all of the shaitan.
Yeah.
Woman exposing herself is from the shaitan. No, we don't need you on social media. No, no, no.
SubhanAllah.
People have lived for hundreds of years without women being out there exposed in public, especially in this manner that ruptures homes, ruptures relationships. What good is this going to do right now when your daughter grows up and she finds out that you guys got a divorce because of some nonsense, because you were on social media, you wanted to feel good, thinking you're helping people with Islam.
SubhanAllah. May Allah protect us. The next point I wanted to get to was the hadith. So there's a famous hadith that mentions something to the extent of all the permissible things that Allah has made, the thing that He hates the most is a divorce. And so there's some discussion about the authenticity. Why don't you shed some light on that?
نعم. إن أبغض الحلال عند الله الطلاق. This is a hadith that some ulama said munkar لا يجوز mursal هو من الضعيف. It's not something that the Prophet ﷺ has said, it's a lie. And some said that it's permissible at best, meaning it's a hasan. And that's one is based on the narration, meaning the text itself, and one is based on a chain of narration. Okay? But to be clear to you guys, that we don't regurgitate things without knowing the consequences and why, that the Prophet ﷺ divorced many times, not just one, not just twice. And the Prophet ﷺ would never do something that أبغض الحلال عند الله, that the most hated, and hate is a very strong word to be used in what is halal context, okay? Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala cannot hate something that He made halal and or permissible. Okay, so you guys need to understand that. So that's why the text itself has a question mark on it or upon it or within it. Okay, so and if it was, you know, the prophets, when we say خمسة رسل من أولي العزم, we say the 5 prophets that are the highest ranks, that they do excellence. Everything they do is excellence. If there was any reprimand or any low for divorce, the Prophet ﷺ would have never done it. Because the Prophet ﷺ only does things in excellence. Okay? So the Prophet ﷺ divorced women even you know, before they entered. And there's a fun story with this, that a woman came from the Bedou that the Prophet ﷺ was supposed to marry. And most of the marriages of the Prophet ﷺ were allegiances, were for political reasons. Okay, so the Bedouins would sell a wife to him, and they would say, "Oh, we want you to marry him so they could be close to the Prophet ﷺ," and then they create an alliance and so forth and so on. Okay, so Aisha radiallahu anha, or Hafsa, or both of them, as much as they are jealous of each other, Hafsa and Aisha, they were close friends, and they would plot against the new wives that came. Radiallahu anhunna jami'an. When the woman came, they told her, when you go and you walk into when the Prophet ﷺ walks into your room or your house, say إني أعوذ بالرحمن منك أو أعوذ بالله منك, you know, and she didn't know what that means for whatever reason. The Prophet ﷺ, as soon as she walked in, she said that, and they knew if the Prophet ﷺ heard that, he would divorce her without even consummating the marriage. Okay, and فقال لقد استعذت بعظيم الحق بأهلك. The Prophet ﷺ, he said that you asked refuge. Because what did she say is, I seek refuge from Allah, in Allah from you. So the Prophet ﷺ, he said, you seek refuge in somebody who was mighty, go back to your family. And he divorced her without the consummation of marriage. And there was another divorce. It's said that the Prophet ﷺ married more than the 11 and so forth. But the point is, the Prophet ﷺ never had any clear hadith that is telling people, no, you should not divorce. When we are reconciling people, when we're helping couples, we try to fix the problem. We don't want divorce. Divorce is not something good for society, for the people, and so forth. But the divorce can be a remedy for a relationship, especially when people are mature and they realize that they're not divorcing over stupid things of the dunya. They're not divorcing over, oh, you gained weight, you lost weight, oh, you don't make that much money. They're really divorcing over things that will not help them get close to Allah. Because the point of marriage, and when we say, marriage is the half of your deen, that's how important marriage is. So to rupture that is you're going to lose the half of your deen. Okay? So we are going to work hard to do that. So when you're married to somebody, make sure that you marry them to fulfill your deen, not your desires. You will fall out of those desires. You will fall out of love. Proof is in the pudding. Look at the kuffar. They know each other and fall in love, in parentheses, for many years. Then they decide to get married. And then as soon as they get married, they get a divorce. Because love before marriage is just lust. And it's not true love. Hence the reason why most people, or many people who marry before marriage, they were in love, they divorce as well, just like those who don't. And the stats are very, very similar in most cases. So just realize why you're divorcing. And if the things that led you to divorce, you're going to fix them after you get married, if you fix them before you divorce, you won't lose your family, you won't lose your husband, you don't lose your children, your family unit. No matter what you do, if it's a good husband or a good wife and you guys divorce over nonsense, things that could be fixed, you will all regret it later on, because the kids are going to take the biggest blow in divorce, no matter what.
SubhanAllah, I remember before you said something that was, it should probably be written in gold, honestly.
Allahu Akbar.
It was Allahum Barak. It was when you said that you'll know a person for who they really are when they're in the situation.
When there's a divorce. No.
Yeah.
Sahih. And I said that to this couple who was we're working on this divorce right now. And I said, subhanallah, I told the sister, you are going to know who you're married to.
Wow.
Now that you're in this divorce process. Okay? And mashallah, yani, she consults with me, alhamdulillah, on anything she needs to move forward with and whatnot. So may Allah make it easy for her, inshallah ta'ala. And for all you sisters, wallahi ikhwani, you guys don't realize we love you guys for the sake of Allah. We love our sisters. Akhi, wallahi al-azim. If anybody's messing with a sister out there, even if a sister, just don't hold it against me. I know I start out good and I'm going to end it. If you're wearing a convertible hijab, we're still going to defend you. Wallahi, we're going to protect. We're going to fight for you. Just so you know, okay? So this comes from a deep, deep place that I have sisters, I have daughters. I have 4 daughters myself. So this is a subject that is dear to my heart. I'm teaching my daughters at an early age what it means to be a wife, not a good employee. The other thing I tell people is not only if you were to fix the problems you're going to fix after marriage, after divorce, prior to when you're married, I tell people is, billahi alayk, especially the sisters. Us men, we need to provide. So something I really want you guys to realize, that Islam is a patriarchal religion where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala made it mandatory upon women that they are under the wing, protection, provision of a man. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala made it as such. It's not me. It's not 50-50. It's not you work and he works. Every time a woman works, it takes away from her femininity. Okay? And for you sisters who are working and that you've been married for more than 5 years, because you won't start to realize this until 5 years, especially if you have 1 or 2 children. Okay? You'll realize that you do way more for your job and your boss, and you respect your boss in his face. Now, behind his back, you don't have to respect him. If you have a good job, you're showing way more respect to your boss and your job and work than you are your husband. You're going to be held accountable on the Day of Judgment for that. Allah didn't create you to work. When Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He says, listen up, sisters. Your wives, He's talking to the men, your wives are a place where of seeding, harth.
Tilt your soil.
It's a soil for your seed. It's a place of where, But the secret in the ayah is not that, because everybody kind of knows this. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, فَأْتُوا حَرْثَكُمْ أَنَّا شِئْتُمْ. So go to your breeding grounds whenever you wish, whenever you please. It's not once a day, it's not once a month, it's not once a week, it's not twice a week. Of course, there has to be some balance. We understand that. But it's not a play-in, it's not a game, sister. It's not a game. And the point I really want to send home tonight, everybody with, inshallah ta'ala, is this. For every woman that wants to marry a man, let's say you found a quality man at work, a young man, hypergamy's there, he's a good Muslim, he's a good paying job, you're going to take care of the kids, you're going to be the princess, you're going to have a very beautiful life. And you told that man who's going to buy a house and maybe give you half of it later on, because he won't know who you are until divorce time comes around. For sure. Okay, that you won't know how bad your in-laws are or your wife until divorce really, really happens and it goes into action, separation, okay? Unfortunately, people are good at hiding who they are, okay? And if they didn't, they probably would never get married. If you, sister, told this man, or if I sat down and said, hey, young man, after 5 years of marriage, so before you turn 30 and you're going to be the peak of who you are as a man, because women start to peak out at 25, sometimes 30, 28 if they're lucky. So this is the peak, like right here. Then you start to go down. So there's 25 and there's 35 right here. Okay? So you're going up to the peak, then there, and you're coming down to 35. So when you're past 35, you're going down really, really quick. Okay? That's just nature. That's not me. That's just nature. Okay? You can work out, you can eat healthy, you can do all these things, you can maintain a very healthy lifestyle. Work and stress don't help that at all. Okay? For sure. But if you told that man, by the time you're 30, when you're really peaking and your value has increased, and your peak is going to start between 30 and 40, you're just starting to peak. So you have 10 more years of the best years of your life, that you're only going to be intimate with your wife once a week to once a month, like 90% of the men out there in families right now. Do you think he'll ever get married? Would he get married? Is that a good deal for anybody? It's not. So think about these things before you guys get married. If you cannot fulfill that, like our mashayikh, our ulama taught us two things that we teach our daughters. Your husband, you have to make sure that the bedroom is straight and the kitchen or his stomach is straight. And he'll bring the world to your knees or to your feet. But there has to be no ego. There has to be no kuffar ego in there. And that's unfortunately, right now, sisters will go to college and go to college and go to college and thinking they're adding value to their resume, but they're really kicking themselves out of the market. So even when they get to marry, they have divorces after that. They're more susceptible. The more education a woman has, the more chance that she has of divorce. Once you get a bachelor's degree, sister, your marriage, you asking for marriage goes from about 63% to 83% or 86% just by you getting a college degree.
You mean asking for a divorce?
Yes, asking for divorce, yes. And 80% of the time, or get a divorce. 80% of the time, it's, 86%, it's the woman that asks for a divorce because she has a college degree. All these stats are in the boy crisis, it's Farrell something, Will Farrell or something like this. Okay. Farrell. Say again?
No.
Yeah, it's Farrell. Look at it, the boy crisis. It's about 368 pages, if my memory serves me right. That's a book every person should read before you have children. Kind of realize what happens to your children and what the stats are if you become a single mother because you are a boss babe or you can do it. And then the last notion, so I want to touch upon this, and then there's one more notion before I move on, inshallah ta'ala, is Men are not looking for a successful woman that's out there. We're looking for a competent woman. Competent and successful are two different things. Now, there are some men who want to utilize your money, but those are the men you despise. Women despise these men that want to marry them for their money. They want to marry for your beauty, for your femininity, but if you're working 8 to 10 hours a day, from the time you wake up till the time you get home, it's 10 hours. At least 50 hours a week, you're just in the hustle and the bustle. How can you be feminine? You can't. The world here, especially in the West, dictates that you become very competitive. You become, your testosterone levels have to go up. Hence the reason why women are no longer feminine, because they have a job. But even with all of that, they treat their bosses better than they do their husbands. Whether willingly or unwillingly, they do it because they value the paycheck that will take us to hellfire. If you stayed home, and I said this and I'll say this again, if a woman from the time she's born, she stays in her father's home, never leaves the home, then she's married, she never leaves her husband's house, and when she leaves, she goes to the cemetery, she's not going to be blamed on the day of judgment for not being a boss babe. She's just not. As long as she's fulfilling her duties and she's a good wife, a good mother, somebody who can nurture human beings, young people, to become an exceptional Muslims. And that's why Muslims were really ahead, because there were mothers who were not out there. Even the jobs that women did were very leisure, meaning they weren't like 8, 10 hours laborious like we do today. They only did the necessities, and it was around the house and so forth, and with other women and so forth. And so they weren't really slaves to these jobs. They did them more out of necessity. So, and I'm not talking about somebody who says, well, what am I going to do? I have to work. I'm not talking about your case. I'm talking about the women who has to work because we need to get 2 cars instead of 1. She has to work because we need to go on 2 vacations instead of 1 every 2 years. Those are the problematic issues that will end up ruining your marriage.
What do you say then about women who make the case? They say like, well, what if my husband, he doesn't show affection, or they'll say like, he doesn't want to be as intimate as I want him to be. So. Meaning, like, it's the opposite. The husband doesn't want intimacy as much as the wife, and so some women complain about that too.
Yeah, it's her right to get a certain amount of affection and intimacy, attention, being taken care of. And if this is not happening from the husband, you have rights. This is a sort of, when we said the talaq al-darar, or talaq, a divorce that comes with hardship. If there's hardship, then and you can no longer live with this person because of that, then there is an option. There is divorce. I'm talking about the people that can fix their lives and they end up getting divorces because they are negligent, because they are mainstream, because they are following social media and or following the people on social media who are living fake lives. They're following the kuffar. The kuffar, dear sister, at 18 or 15 or 13, whenever they're in heat, they just go find somebody in any corner, anywhere, a car, an elevator, and it's on, just like animals. Muslims, we cannot do that. You waste the best days, the best years, the most beautiful time of your life from 18 to 28. Some say it's below that, but I'm going to give you a 10-year span. The best years of your life that you can never get back, where you're fertile and you can handle it. Where you have energy, you have a zeal for life, you want to live, and so forth, and you waste those going to school, which is another form of being prepared for the workplace. You're slaving for that. We're not saying don't go to school. You guys heard me many times on here said, I really want you guys to get at least a bachelor's degree. I still hold that true, because pretty soon this phone that we have and this internet and everything that we're using, you're going to need to have a bachelor's degree just to navigate this modern life. I say it and I say it and I say it. And most people who have bachelor's degrees make more money than those who have a high school. And of course, you're smart and you're going to be the next Andrew Tate. Okay? Especially you men, you young men. Get off your bum and start working. And I say this to my son as well, and this is hopefully, inshallah, all part of the nasiha I'm going to leave you with. My son, inshallah ta'ala, he'll finish his bachelor's in he has about a year and a half left. He'll be about before 22, inshallah. Okay? I said, just go ahead and finish your master's. Well, I don't know if I want to keep going to school. I said, you do want to keep on going to school. I said, the stats prove it. I'm going to prove it. And I said, if you want to place yourself in the marketplace where most women have a bachelor's and or a master's and above, if you don't even have a bachelor's, you're out of luck. Your pickings are very, very slim, and it's going to reflect upon who's going to raise your children. And you're more than likely going to end up working, and she's working, and 50-50, and then divorce, just like the kuffar. Or if you want to be hypergamous and you want to make more money, you have to have at least a master's to broaden the horizon of your pickings anywhere in the world. So if you want to have better pickings, young men, you need to get a master's degree. I don't care how much it costs. You can get it under it doesn't matter, okay? You can do it online. There's cheap ways to do it while you're working or so forth and so on. But get it. And the faster you get it out of the way, the better. It will increase your chances just having it on your resume. If you're seeking a job, if you're going to start a business, you should be doing that master's in your field that you're looking for, inshallah ta'ala, so it will help you move forward and be more successful as fast as possible.
There is an aspect that we forgot to talk about, and that is the role of the county courts, because sometimes people get married there.
No.
And so as there are secret marriages, there's also secret divorces that happen.
No.
You know, you go down, one of the spouses goes down to the courts and the county, and then they file, they write, they do all these applications, pay the fees. Does that also signify an actual real divorce?
Just like we said with marriages, ikhwani, the marriage has to happen Islamically. The divorce has to happen Islamically. Okay? Now, if you guys decide not to go to the court for your marriage, I told you might have problems later on, whether it's inheritance, especially in the West. The same thing with your divorce. You technically can't remarry. So now you're going to be having these secret marriages on the side. What's the purpose of having a secret divorce? I don't get it. Wallahi, I don't get it. Sometimes I hear these stories, but I just don't believe that people in this day and age do this.
Yeah.
In America or in the West. I don't get it. Akhi, divorce, do it right. Be a man, be a human. It's probably the men that do this a lot, I'm assuming, right? I mean, because the women, they want to drag you through court and get all the money they can.
Well, that's where the secret marriages kind of happen, because women, if they don't want to be with the husband, and especially for the non-practicing couples anyways, the women go down to the court, and so the husband doesn't even know that he's divorced until he's served.
Until he's served?
Yeah, and he's like, oh, you know, my wife says she was just at the family's house.
No.
And so now he
Well,
finds
alhamdulillah,
out
now he knows who he married. He can move on in life.
Mm.
Just get your divorce and move on. Get your divorce and move on. Just get your divorce and move on.
Yeah.
I mean, and all these are very specific cases. I'm hoping and I'm thinking or knowing that this isn't like mainstream. There's a lot of stupidity of people doing these things. But there needs to be some why on how, first of all, if you're doing this and you're divorcing, what if your husband doesn't give you divorce?
Yeah, that's
okay. So if your husband has the right to not give you divorce, unless an Islamic ruler or judge supersedes and or overrides his authority and gives you a divorce by forcing him to give you a divorce as well. That's how it goes. Or if he's dead or lost in an island or went to war and never came back, and it's been years, then they forcefully divorce. These are very, very specific situations. But your husband's sitting at the couch at home and you're in the county. That's not lawful in the eyes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That's the divorce we're talking about here. أيما امرأة سألت زوجها طلاقا من غير بأس فلا تشمن رائحة الجنة. She will not smell the smell of paradise if she asks for divorce without any hardship. And hardship is not the yelling, is not the screaming, is not the things that you do with your siblings or your mother. If you want to put it in balance, the fights you have with your siblings, even at this age, if you guys break plates, that's normal. Then that's what you can do with your husband. If you guys yell and scream or argue or say things, you don't stop being brother and sister. You don't stop being husband and wife. Now, there's things that constitute that are above and beyond the natural limits and or ما يسمى بالعرف, that's known socially. So for instance, we don't beat our women, we don't punch them, we don't do certain things. And when I say beating, I'm not talking about the Quranic verse. I'm talking about those who like whip their wives with certain things or beat them because mashallah they need to get beaten, to be honest with you, by some men. But on the other hand, if it's a normal, like for instance, I might have said this once, a sister had a recording of her husband yelling and screaming, and he might have swore once or twice, and he left the voicemail deliberately for her so she doesn't twist his words. Okay? And he was upset. After she asked for khula, or they were asking for a divorce and they got the divorce, she goes to the sheikh or whomever was helping her out. She said, listen to my husband. Listen what he says. This constitutes hardship. So the sheikh said to her, she said, sister, if everyone who's married did this, nobody would be married. These are normal yellings and dealings and so forth and so on. This does not constitute a hardship. So who determines this hardship? Your parents, your mother, your father, our elders who sit down and say, Ukhti, this is not a hardship. This is normal. This is marriage. You might have not seen this.
Work it out. Yeah.
Or if this after 2 years happens, you understand this is not normal.
Yeah.
Now, if it happens from day one, we understand there's a problem we need to fix. We need the therapy. We need to take this guy to Mexico and beat him up. Whatever it is, we got your back. But don't do the sneaky. Don't go through the court system and then say, "Oh, I'm divorced. I'm going to go marry somebody else." You're not divorced. You could be committing zina wal a'yadu billah. And what are your kids going to think about you? Oh, you're going to say, "I have no kids." Okay, you can keep on finding excuses. It doesn't make it right. Did I answer that? Does that make sense?
That makes sense. Jazakallah khairan. Yes, and so just, I would say, wrap up final points about divorce.
No.
And just, give us, you already give us a lot of advice about divorce anyways. But
I know, and we've talked a lot about this throughout the podcast, and it's such a broad, vast, I'm just trying to find the pointers that most people miss because they talk about divorce from a jurisprudence standpoint. And that's all in the books. You can find that. Talk to your mashayikh if you need it. But two things. If you treat your husband like a boss, wallahi, he will change. In that book, I told you guys, love and respect. Men seek respect and crave it and need it, and it's a must in their lives. And women seek love. They want love, affection, attention, so forth. So one of the things I tell people, if you're out there looking for a sister to marry, and the first thing, like, what are things that are important to you? And on her list, the first couple things are respect. That woman is in her masculine. She's not in her feminine. Okay? And if she's argumentative, she's in her masculine, she's not in her feminine. أو من ينشأ في الحلية وهو في الخصام غير مبين فمن كان مبينا في الخصام فهو يعني ليس في حالته الأنثوية or ليست في حالتها الأنثوية إن كانت امرأة يعني. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He says that the woman is raised, is nurtured in beauty and silk and softness, in beautiful garments. She loves to dress up, to beautify herself. This is from an early age. I see my 2-year-old daughter, she just runs around and she's posing. She's like, "Do you like my dress, Abby?" She's 2 years old. She's running around and she's spinning, akhi. Where did she learn this? Allahu alam, it's in the blood, akhi. Okay? Yeah, subhanallah. وَهُوَ فِي الْخِصَامِ غَيْرُ مُبِينٍ. And then in arguments, they are not articulate. Why? Because they are emotional. So once they can start arguing back and forth, بِعِنْ وَقْحَ, like we say in Arabic, with open eyes, and that woman is in her masculine. Sister, you are in your masculine. You need to tone it down and work on your femininity. That's what you're having button heads with your husband, because you're in your masculine. And why do they learn this? Corporate America and school. Debate class. Ya habibi, masha'Allah. Sister, go into debate class so you can learn to leave your feminine and jump right into your masculine. Then you want to marry a man, and then why are we fighting? Why are we butting heads? Okay? Your feminine will get everything you need to get out of a husband. Being in your feminine. And if you really want to know, the world around us only suggests evil things. Okay, there's a sister I'm going to recommend to you guys, and I'm always digging and looking, wallahi, for you guys, of course, for my children, and from my knowledge. There's a sister. Her name is Karen with a Y, R-Y-N, Karyn, Seitz or Sites, Seitz. She calls herself the Happy Wife School. Billahi alaykum, jump onto her website and you'll find her. She calls it the Happy Wife School, I believe. And she, in parentheses, talk about how women need to be red pilled. And so when you hear that, you don't freak out. I'm not talking about the red pilled as men. It's more talking about taking responsibility for who you are and not being a victim. Your husband, sister, can never make you happy. He won't, and he cannot. Only you can make you happy. Those are my closing statements. If you leave camp victim, it's not the world around you. If you have a weight issue, it's your problem. If you have a self-esteem issue, it's your problem. Stop blaming your parents. Stop blaming your siblings. Stop blaming your husband. Stop blaming the world. And wallahi, if you stop blaming the world and you have just enough dignity and common sense that you can stop blaming everybody else for your problems and look inwards and say, I take responsibility for my problems. I don't know where to start, but at least I'm going to get out of camp victim. Wallahi uqsim lakum billah. And I always try to find people that can help you. And this sister, mashallah alayha, she is very, and I listen to her a lot. Some of her podcasts are audio only, some are video, whatever, but I listen to her a lot just to kind of see if there's
هي مسلمة؟
ليست بمسلمة, unfortunately. ليست بمسلمة.
الله يهديها.
الله يهديها للإسلام. And she talks about your situation and how most women emasculate their men that are good men, and the men fall into the trap because they want to please their wives, because they don't want divorce, because they don't want to ruin their families. But women, instead of appreciating that man and trying to work on the marriage becoming better, they take advantage of that man and they treat him as a weak man. And they end up disrespecting him more and more. Okay, so I think those are my closing statements. We could sit and talk about divorce for 600 more years, and there's more cases, there's more stories that I hear almost every day. It's a nonstop dilemma of our time. People don't stick it in anymore. They're a microwave generation. So when the kitchen gets hot, they just leave the whole thing running and they just leave. They just leave. And that's hard to do. And the last thing I will say, and I said this once to someone, I said, if you treat your job like your house and your wife and your household and your spouse, you'd be in jail right now. You would be fired from your job because you're not taking responsibility. You're not adding value to the organization and or business. Your credit would be really bad. You'd be late. They would repo your car and your house, and they would take you to jail eventually. If you lived your job in your outside world and social life the exact same way you live your marriage, most women right now would be in jail. And you're going to see a lot of men, maybe a lot of men, but for the most part, sisters, every man that marries is doing at least the minimum of providing and grinding every day. Whether he likes it or not, he comes into the marriage knowing he has to provide, he has to work hard, he has to get out there. He could be lazy, he could have ADHD, he could have many problems, but he's out there at least doing some kind of minimum, and he brings home the bacon. So that's why we say most women, because most women who are married, especially Muslims, they go out and work and do all these things by choice, not necessity. And you start to realize what your necessity is. It's really not a necessity. We just want more mubah. And that's what happens when we indulge in mubah, which is permissible, all the things that are permissible, not necessities. That leads us to haram, the ulama said. أقول ما تسمعون واستغفر الله لي ولكم فاستغفروه الغفور الرحيم. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.